Well, in the last month in this church, in the last 30 days, we've had 4 deaths in the congregation. I've done more memorials than I've preached sermons. Friday, we memorialized the board chair, Miss Cordell, known to you as the donut man with red hair. A job he loved because he made you happy one donut at a time, without rank or pretense. He was the chair of the board. As we remember Dennis, our hearts torn open, we knew there was some common bond in the room. We knew some truth about living, some feeling that reality bursts through and invades our lives when we lose someone. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, said the poet. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death can touch. And so today we honor death and memory. Why honor? A most difficult and not very fun thing to do. But all humanity has a way to honor the dead, to mark loss of a loved one. I think we are programmed so strongly to manage the complexities and the complicated events in our lives that when death occurs, we are forced to go deeper, to understand a unique thing to the human spirit, which is that we know that we too will die. No creature on earth that we know of understands this truth, that all flowers will fade and time will march on, and our lives mean something. This is inherent in the human spirit. And it cries out for us to do something deliberately, to understand it each time we encounter grief. So we practice this fearful thing of loving what death can touch in ways that help and sometimes in ways that hinder, but mostly we hope in ways that help. Friday, I spoke of Dennis's coming to this church after the death of his partner, a death to AIDS, and how this place loved him back into the world, a certain salvation, and how we were to stand on this chancel just weeks before he died and wed him to his new partner, Michael. A man came up to me after the worship service and told me that when his partner died of AIDS in the church that they had gone to memorialize, the preacher spoke of the evils of being gay. Indeed, the evils of the church can occur at these times too. To honor is to show respect or to hold in esteem, to bow as in a dance, to confer distinction on, as in to place a crown on a king or queen, or to accept or to pay a debt, as in what you do with your credit card. To honor. To honor is the task of human life in the face of death. To hold in esteem, to bow to the dead, to confer distinction on the life, to accept, and perhaps to pay a debt. In all the complicated ways that we do this, we must do it. We have burial grounds, which my children have made us hush in the car as we go by. Sometimes they say, hold your breath until we get past the graveyard, which, as you know, in some counties is a long breath to hold. But in some way, in their way, it is to honor the dead. We spread ashes. We hold the ashes in containers. We make stone markers. We engrave names on the stone as we do in our memorial garden. All cultures have a way to do this. In India, I believe I have told you this before, where I lived for a year and a half, I remember in every home the pictures of the dead hanging along the walls, all marked with the signifier of ritual, all equal to the gods, as if saying the dead are present. The dead are part of the present moment, and our job is to relate to them. There's an interesting TED Talk that you should hear. It's by an anthropologist named Kelly Swayze, and she talks about this intimacy with the dead in the culture of Indonesia, where her husband is from, where they see that death is a gradual social process. The focal point of all life is the funeral. Elaborate rituals and sacrifices are made during the time of naming the deceased. Whole economies surround the investment of the community into these funerals, sometimes lasting weeks and weeks. They understand death not with fear, but as part of life. In other words, for these Indonesians, death doesn't happen until the funeral is complete, which sometimes happens years after the person has died. So for them, they go through the process of preserving the body and then placing the body in the home. A kind of macabre thing for us, perhaps. But for them, the dead lives, is fed, is cared for, is played with, is talked to, is brought to family gatherings. Literally, the body. The proximity to death, which doesn't fit into our ways, means this, that they recognize and express that our relationship with other human beings and the impact other human beings have on us doesn't cease when they are gone. That over time, we can transform relationships from living to dead. That the dead can be present for us in important ways. Why can't we do that? We who are so quick to bury and set aside. The interesting impact of this in the Indonesian culture is that by having death be a part of life and unraveling means that also they don't prolong life unnecessarily, and they don't debilitate people to prolong life. I could get on a medical soapbox at this moment. They say that life should unspool naturally, that we shouldn't make too many interferences, especially toward the end, that death is a part of life-changing society. But we set it aside. We prolong life at all costs. We hold it at a distance, I think, with a sense of fear. So why honor the dead? Why bring them forward to our sanctuary today? Why light the candles? To honor, to confer, to accept, to pay a debt, perhaps. But also to transform those relationships, to keep them alive. because they are meaningful and can have meaning on us. So the reading that Christine read was by Maria Shriver. You know, her mother was JFK's mother and the other Kennedy brothers. And in this reading, she goes to the grave and she starts to speak to the dead. Does that happen to you? Do you ever speak with the dead? I do. But it comes in kind of weird times, sometimes funny times, like my Italian Brooklyn grandmother arriving just at the moment when the garlic is getting tan. She says to me, "Don't burn the garlic, Dan." Or when I'm preparing my kids to go outside on a cold day, I hear my Massachusetts grandmother say, "It's cold out there, Dan." I say, "Go away." But then other times I want to invite them in. I want to hear the wise words one more time. My Italian grandmother sitting at the kitchen always saying to us, "Charity begins in the home." And my Massachusetts grandmother reminding us to be kind to each other. But we can't always have it both ways. So I think to be deliberate about those relationships, to create moments when we can converse with those who have passed, is important. So in my home on All Souls Day, which is the 2nd of November, I create an altar like this before anyone gets up in the morning with the pictures of the family that have passed and candles. So when my children come in to breakfast, they see there the family. Not something distant and gone, but something present. And we talk about who these people were, what they brought to the world. We create meaning in the room with the lives that have gone. When Maria Shriver finished her story in that speech, she was speaking to 30,000 women. She said this, "I stopped crying, closed my eyes, and asked again, 'Mom, after all the packing up and wrapping up and getting everything ready for the next governor, what should I do?' Everybody is asking what I'm going to do next. What do you think I should do with the rest of my life?" I assume that Maria's mother was someone who had an opinion on occasion, as I assume some of these people in these photos did too. Here she is talking to the dead, seeking the wisdom. She finishes saying, "I heard a voice. Was it hers or mine? It said, 'Maria, right now it's okay not to know what to do next. You have a job to do. Do it well. Finish it properly. When it's all over, you will know.'" She concluded saying, "I finally know what my mother would have told me. She would have said, 'Maria, there's nothing for you to be afraid of anymore. Have the courage to live your life and know that whatever you decide to do, I will always be with you.'" One of the great spiritual writers, Frederick Buechner, said this. He wrote, "When you remember me, it means you have carried something of who I am with you, that I have left some mark of who I am on who you are. It means that you can summon me back to your mind, even though countless years and miles stand between us. It means that if we meet again, you will know me. It means that even after I die, you can still see my face and hear my voice and speak to me in your heart. So why can't we? We have built an altar to the dead. It's important to do so here in church each year. It's important to invoke in your mind and heart the memory of someone who has died who you loved or who loved you, who urged you on, who held you preciously so that you can hold them now. I invite you to join me now in this ritual we do each year to bless the mourners and to speak the names of those who have died. I invite you to stand if you have lost someone in the last 12 months, whoever you are, to rise and be recognized by us with a prayer. Will you stand if you have lost someone within the last 12 months? For you mourners, I read this from the Jewish tradition. It says, "Bless our memories now as we remember in the rising of the sun, and in its going down we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter we remember them. In the opening buds and the rebirth of spring we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of the summer we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of the autumn, we remember them. We are weary, but we are strong. When we are lost and sick at heart, remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are part of us as we remember them." Thank you. You may be seated. Let us join together in prayer. Blessed are those who mourn, and especially those who stand here among us today. Blessed are those who know loss. Blessed are those who know a leftover love, those who may have lost trust in the world but can find hope in the seeds of remembrance or acts of friendship and affection. Blessed are the mourners in our midst who rise to honor the passing of someone in their lives. Blessed are they who can be held by this community. May they find peace. And we name the members of this church who have died since All Souls Day last year and present their pictures here on the screens of the sanctuary. They are Dennis Cordell, Willard Filiaw, Mary Gilmore, Troy Guidros, Albert Half, Joe Hogue, Dorothy Latimer, Ernestine Mullinax, Marilyn Neustadt, and Ross Powell. I invite you now to speak aloud the names of those you are remembering today. May their names resonate here in this sanctuary. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Amen and amen.